How does nature respond to human ambition and pride? Will their conversations about glory and immortality save them or lead them to disaster? And in the blink of an eye, what shocking event will test their courage and destiny? Welcome to Classic Storytime Hub. Today, we explore The Ambitious Guest by Nathaniel Hawthorne, reimagined for a new audience. Stay with us as we dive into this reimagined classic tale, full of suspense, philosophy, and the haunting power of nature.
One crisp September evening, a family huddled together by the hearth, stacking it high with driftwood from the mountain streams, brittle pine cones, and the jagged remnants of fallen trees, remnants that had tumbled violently down the cliffs above. The fire roared up the chimney, throwing warm golden light across the room, dancing on every face. The father's eyes held a quiet joy. The mother's smile was gentle but full of warmth. The children's laughter rang like chimes through the cabin. The eldest daughter, 17 and radiant, seemed to carry happiness itself in her very presence. And there, in the coziest corner, the grandmother's knitting needles clicked steadily, a portrait of contentment in the twilight of life. In the harshest corner of New England, they had discovered their little sanctuary of peace, their patch of heart's ease amid the relentless cold. Yet their home was perched in peril. The cottage clung to the notch of the White Hills, where the wind cut sharp all year, and winter came mercilessly, battering the house with icy gusts before spilling down to the Saco Valley below. Above them, the mountain loomed, a silent, towering threat. Loose stones tumbled at night, rattling down its sheer face, startling the family in the darkness. The daughter's innocent jest had just drawn a chorus of laughter when a sudden wind swept through the notch. It lingered for a heartbeat outside the cabin, rattling the door with a moan that sounded almost human, part lament, part warning, before it drifted away into the valley. For a brief moment, a shadow fell across the room. The air felt heavy with something unspoken. Then relief flickered. A traveler's hand lifted the latch, his steps unnoticed until they whispered against the wooden floor. A faint wail accompanied him through the door, a melancholy echo that faded as he entered, leaving the family both startled and strangely curious. Even in their remote mountain refuge, the family was never truly cut off from the world. The notch carved a dramatic path through the White Hills, a lifeline where the pulse of travel and trade beat steadily between Maine, the Green Mountains, and the distant shores of the St. Lawrence. Carriages rolled up to the cottage door. Solitary travelers paused, grateful for a word or a smile, before pressing on through the bleak pass or down into the valley. Teamsters bound for Portland might rest here for the night, and if a young man traveled alone, he might linger just a little too long, perhaps stealing a fleeting kiss from a shy mountain girl at parting. It was a simple, old-fashioned inn, where payment covered only bread and lodging, but where kindness and warmth were freely given, far beyond any price. So when faint footsteps echoed between the outer door and the threshold beyond, the family rose instinctively, grandmother, children, all, ready to greet someone who, if not kin, seemed bound to them by fate itself. The door swung open to reveal a young man. At first, his expression carried the weariness and melancholy of a traveler who had faced a wild, lonely road at twilight. Yet the glow from the fire and the sight of welcoming faces seemed to breathe life back into him. His heart lifted at the warmth of the household, from the grandmother fussing with a chair, apron in hand, to the small child stretching tiny arms towards him. And in a single glance, an easy familiarity sparked between him and the eldest daughter. "Ah, this fire is heaven sent," he exclaimed, shaking the chill from his hands. "I've been frozen stiff. The notch is like the bellows of a giant furnace, blowing a fierce blast straight in my face all the way from Bartlett."
"Heading toward Vermont, then?" the father asked,
helping lift a light knapsack from the young man's shoulders. "Yes, Burlington and well beyond," he replied, his voice calm but tired. "I had planned to reach Ethan Crawford's tonight, but on a road like this, a traveler moves at his own pace. No matter. I saw this fire, felt the warmth, and saw your cheerful faces. It was as if it had been lit for me alone, waiting for my arrival. So I'll sit here with you and make myself at home." The stranger drew his chair closer to the fire, letting the heat thaw the chill from his journey. But just as he settled in, a deep, thunderous thud echoed from outside, a stone tumbling down the mountainside, leaping so forcefully it struck the precipice across from the cabin. The family froze, their breaths caught in their throats. The stranger, sensing their tension, instinctively held his own. "The old mountain's reminding us he's still in charge," the father said with a wry smile, regaining his composure. "He nods, he rumbles, he threatens to tumble. But we know his moods, and we've learned to live alongside him. And if he ever comes down in earnest, we've a safe spot nearby that keeps us out of harm's way." By the time supper was finished, a hearty meal of roasted bear meat, the stranger had woven himself seamlessly into the rhythm of the household. His easy manner and natural warmth drew laughter and stories from every member of the family, until they spoke together as freely as though he had always been part of their rugged mountain life. He carried himself with a quiet pride, dignified and reserved among the wealthy and powerful, yet always ready to lower his head at the door of a humble cottage, becoming for a time like a brother, a son, or even a friend to those whose lives were simpler. In the Notch family, he discovered a warmth and purity of heart that touched him deeply, a clear intelligence rooted in New England, and a native poetry that seemed to grow from the very mountains and chasms surrounding their home, poetry gathered without even realizing it from the raw beauty of their wild and dangerous world. He had traveled far, alone, along a life marked by solitude. His cautious nature had kept him distant from those who might have walked beside him. And yet here in this secluded household, a strange, almost prophetic connection stirred between him and the family. Their hearts opened to him as freely as he opened to them. In that instant, the invisible walls of solitude fell away, revealing that shared fate, even if brief, can bind more strongly than the ties of blood. The essence of the young man's soul, however, lay in ambition, a fierce, abstract hunger for recognition. He could have accepted a quiet, unnoticed life, but the idea of fading into oblivion was unbearable. Desire had hardened into hope, and hope had grown into a quiet certainty that though his current path was lonely and obscure, the legacy of his steps would one day shine. Perhaps not while he lived, but someday, when others looked back through the shadow of his present, they would see the faint glow of his passage, a brilliance that outlasted the fleeting glories of lesser men, a testament that a remarkable life had passed quietly from cradle to grave, largely unseen, yet destined to be remembered. "Not yet," exclaimed the stranger, his face flushed, his eyes alive with sudden fire. "Not yet have I done anything. If I vanished from the world tomorrow, no one would remember me, no one except you. You would only recall that a nameless young man climbed up from the Saco Valley at dusk, shared his heart by your fire, passed through the Notch at sunrise, and was never seen again. No one would ask who he was, no one would wonder where he went. But I cannot die like that, not before I fulfill my purpose. After that, let death come. I will have earned my monument." His words poured out in a rush, raw feeling tangled with lofty dreams. Though his thoughts reached far beyond their simple lives, the family understood him not through logic, but through emotion. Then, suddenly aware of how passionately he had spoken, he flushed with embarrassment, a shy smile breaking through his intensity. "You're laughing at me," he said, catching the eldest daughter's hand, laughing along with them. You think my ambition is foolish as freezing myself atop Mount Washington just so the world might point and stare. Still, he added lightly, it would make a grand pedestal for a statue, wouldn't it? She smiled, her cheeks warm with color. I think it's better to sit here by the fire, she replied softly, to be warm and content, even if no one ever thinks of us. The father sat quietly for a moment, lost in thought. Then he spoke, slowly. Perhaps there's something natural in what the young man says. Had my own thoughts taken that direction, I might have felt the same. It's strange, he added, turning to his wife, how a few words can set a man dreaming of things that were never meant to be. Perhaps they may, the wife said softly, a hint of worry in her voice. Is he thinking about what he'll do when he's a widower? No, no, he replied quickly, a gentle reproach in his tone. When I think of you gone, Esther, I think of myself too. I was only imagining, what if we had a good farm in Bartlett, Bethlehem, or Littleton, somewhere near the White Mountains, but safe from tumbling rocks? I'd want to be respected by my neighbors, called squire, maybe serve a term or two at the general court. Even a plain, honest man can do good there, as much as any lawyer. And when we were old, you and I, not separated by years, I could die quietly in my bed, surrounded by those I love, and leave you weeping for me. A simple slate gravestone would do. My name, my age, a verse from a hymn, something to show I lived honestly and died as a Christian. The stranger's eyes sparkled with understanding. See, he said, it's human nature to crave a monument, whether slate or marble, a granite pillar, or a memory that lingers in the hearts of people long after we're gone. The wife shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. We're in a strange mood tonight, she whispered. It says it's a sign when minds start wandering like this. Listen to the children. They paused, straining to hear through the open door. The younger ones, tucked into their beds in the next room, were still talking, caught up in the energy from the fireside. Each voice rang with excitement, wild dreams and lofty plans for the future, plans of who they would become, what they would achieve, how they would leave their mark on the world. Finally, a small boy spoke above the rest, not to his siblings, but to his mother, his words brimming with innocent curiosity and ambition, carrying the same spark that now lit the room. I'll tell you what I wish, Mother, the little boy shouted, excitement, eyes sparkling with excitement. I want you, Father, Grandma, all of us, and the stranger too, to get up right now and go drink from the basin of the flume. The room erupted in laughter. The idea of abandoning a warm bed and leaving the cozy fire to visit the flume, a wild brook plunging deep into the notch, was delightfully absurd. The boy's excitement was barely out of his mouth when the rumble of a wagon echoed along the road, stopping just short of the cottage. From the wagon came the boisterous voices of 2 or 3 men singing in rough, broken choruses that bounced eerily between the cliffs. They seemed caught between pressing onward and pausing here for the night, their music carrying both cheer and uncertainty into the cold mountain air. Father, the daughter whispered, they're calling your name. But the father hesitated, unsure if they truly meant him. He was careful not to seem eager for guests or gain, so he did not rush to the door. With a crack of the whip, the wagon lurched forward into the notch, the men still laughing and singing, their echoes fading, hauntingly lonely, into the heart of the mountain. There, Mother, the boy cried again. They could have taken us to the flume. Laughter followed, warm and light, but then a subtle change passed over the daughter. Her smile faltered, her gaze dropped to the fire, and a deep, almost imperceptible sigh escaped her lips. She tried to suppress it, but it slipped out anyway. Then, startled and blushing, she glanced around the circle, as if her thoughts had betrayed her. The stranger, noticing the change, asked what crossed her mind. Nothing, she murmured, a gentle smile touching her lips, eyes downcast. I just felt a little lonesome. I've always had a knack for sensing what's in other people's hearts, he said softly, half in jest, half in earnest. "Shall I reveal yours? I can tell what you feel when a young girl shivers by a warm hearth and whispers of loneliness at her mother's side. Shall I put these feelings into words?" "They wouldn't be a girl's feelings any more if you did," she replied, laughing softly, though she avoided his gaze. Their voices were quiet, almost a private murmur in the warmth of the room. Perhaps in that tender moment a seed of something deeper had been planted, a pure, unspoken affection that could only blossom in paradise, for earth was not yet ready. Women are drawn to such gentle dignity, and men with reflective, proud, yet kindly souls often find themselves captivated by simplicity and sincerity like hers. But even as they spoke in soft, delicate tones, the wind through the notch grew deeper, heavier, more mournful. It carried a voice older than memory, as the stranger half joked, a chorus of spirits who, according to legend, had long dwelt in these mountains, guarding their heights and secret recesses. A low, haunting wail traveled along the road, as if a silent funeral procession were passing unseen. To push back the chill of that sorrowful sound, the family tossed pine branches onto the fire. The dry leaves crackled and snapped, sending the flames leaping upward, reclaiming the room with warmth, light, and the quiet miracle of domestic peace. The glow settled over them, soft and tender, touching every face. There were the children, peeking from their beds, eyes wide with curiosity. The father, steady and strong. The mother, calm and careful. The young man, thoughtful and alert. The budding daughter, her cheeks flushed with quiet emotion. And the grandmother, still knitting diligently in her favorite corner. Finally, the aged woman looked up, her fingers moving with practiced grace, ready to speak, as if adding her voice to the harmony of the room. "Old people have their fancies too," the grandmother said at last, her needles never stopping, "just like the young. You've all been wishing and planning, letting your thoughts wander from one dream to another, and now you've set my mind drifting as well. When an old woman has only a step or two left before the grave, what do you suppose she wishes for? Children, this thought will follow me day and night unless I speak it aloud." "What is it, mother?" the husband and wife asked together. The old woman lowered her voice, and a hush drew everyone closer to the fire. With a strange mix of calm and mystery, she confessed that years ago she had already prepared her burial clothes, a fine linen shroud, a neatly pressed cap trimmed with muslin, finer garments than she had worn since her wedding day. But tonight an old superstition had returned to trouble her. In her youth, people used to say that if something was wrong, if a cap sat crooked or a ruffle lay uneven, the body in its coffin, beneath the heavy earth, would struggle to lift its cold hands and set things right. The very thought made her uneasy. "Don't say such things, Grandma," the girl whispered. "And yet," she continued, smiling faintly at her unease, "I want one of you, one of my children, when I'm laid out and resting in my coffin, I want you to hold a mirror over my face. Who knows, perhaps I'll catch one last glimpse of myself, just to see if all is as it should be." A silence followed, deep and heavy. Old and young alike, we all dream of graves and monuments in our own way. I wonder how sailors feel when their ship goes down, when they vanish without a name, without a marker, buried together beneath the vast unmarked sea. For a moment, the old woman's grim musings held the family spellbound. Then, without warning, a sound shattered the night, a deep, roaring blast that seemed to rise from the very bowels of the mountain. It swelled, grew monstrous, filling the air with a terror that pressed on their chests. The cabin shivered, the ground itself quaked, as though the earth had joined in a final apocalyptic trumpet. Young and old froze, eyes wide, hearts hammering. For a brief, suspended heartbeat, no one could speak, no one could move. And then, in unison, they screamed, the words tearing from their lips. "The slide! The slide!" No words can truly capture the horror that followed. The mountainside collapsed in a torrent of rock, earth, and timber, a living avalanche hurtling down with unstoppable force. The family fled the cottage, seeking the refuge they had once thought secure, a barrier built against ordinary danger. Fate, however, was cruel. In their flight, they had abandoned safety and stumbled straight into the path of annihilation. The mountain poured itself upon them, a cataract of ruin. The house, the fire, the chairs, the hearth, all vanished beneath the crushing deluge. The torrent split around the cottage, yet no structure could withstand it. Everything in its path was swept away, erased, as if the world itself had been reset. Long before the echoes of the slide had faded through the mountains, the agony was over, and the victims lay still, their ordeal complete. No trace of their bodies was ever found. And yet, the next morning, the chimney smoked faintly, curling upward along the mountainside. Inside, the fire still smoldered, the chairs arranged in a silent circle around it, as if the family had merely stepped out to behold the mountain's fury and would return at any moment to thank heaven for their miraculous survival. Each of the victims had left behind small tokens, reminders of lives once lived, so that those who knew them might pause, remember, and shed a quiet tear. Their names have traveled far beyond the mountains. They live on now as legend. Poets have mourned them. Songs have been sung of the family that dwelt in the notch, and of the cruel fate that swept them away. Rumors spread of a stranger, a young man who had been welcomed into the cottage that fateful night, and who may have shared in the same tragic end. Some believed it, others doubted. And yet, what woe for the noble-hearted youth whose ambition and dreams of earthly immortality were never realized. His name, his face, his life, his plans, gone without a trace, a mystery that the world would never solve. His death, like his existence, became a shadow, a question mark lingering over the mountains forever. Whose hands, whose heart, whose soul had endured that final, unimaginable agony? No one could say. The mountains kept their secret. The notch whispered it only to the wind. And so the story, half remembered and half imagined, continues to echo, haunting the peaks and valleys, a testament to lives bright and brief, dreams unfulfilled, and the fleeting, fragile touch of humanity against the immensity of nature.
And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.